Let me take you back to November 10th, 2014. The Naruto manga just ended, and many are wondering what series will come up to fill that vacant spot. But little do they know, the manga they're looking for already debuted just a few months ago. In fact, its first volume was just released only 6 days prior. That manga is My Hero Academia, a series that would go on to define a generation, consistently running as the number 2 alongside One Piece. My Hero was a staple of the Weekly Shonen Jump magazine for pretty much the entirety of its decade-long publication, selling over 100 million volumes worldwide, getting an extremely popular anime adaptation, multiple movies, multiple games, and even having numerous successful spin-off mangas such as My Hero Academia Vigilantes, which would then go on to get its own anime. My Hero Academia, to me at least, felt like the first true new gen. Maybe that's because of its proximity to Naruto's final chapter, or maybe it's because it was the first show since Naruto to reach such widespread popularity in the West. I'm not too sure, but something about it just gave it that oomph, that extra pizzazz that turned it into an icon. Was it the art, the concept, the storytelling, the power system? Well, realistically, it was probably all those things combined and some, but in honor of it reaching its conclusion, we're gonna go over all the things that made My Hero Academia the best series of its generation.
Guys, I'm buying Pookie a bag. I'm gonna get Pookie a new bag.
It's declined.
My Hero Academia, written and drawn by Kohei Horikoshi, takes place in a world where about 80% of humanity has been blessed with genetic mutations called quirks. These quirks manifest themselves in vastly different ways. Some are blessed with genuine superpowers, like the ability to destroy and reconstruct matter or the ability to produce and manipulate energy beams, while others are cursed with a spray bottle as a head or the power to blow themselves up. Our main character, on the other hand, is quirkless. Izuku Midoriya, a boy who spent his life idolizing quirks and the heroes who possessed them, grew up in this world of heroes and odd one out, facing constant harassment because as a hero hopeful with no quirk, he was a walking juxtaposition. That is, until his childhood friend and bully, Katsuki Bakugo, is attacked by a villain, and Midoriya jumps in to save him before he can even think. That's where the story starts. The boy whose body moved before he could think is granted a power passed down through generations from the greatest hero, his idol, All Might. The same power All Might was granted by his master, a power destined to defeat the greatest evil, All for One. From here, Midoriya gets accepted into the most prestigious hero school in Japan, where he learns alongside some of the greatest hero prospects Japan has ever seen, and fights against the greatest villains Japan has ever seen. School events, villain attacks, police raids, and wars. My Hero Academia shows every facet of a superpowered society with great detail, making the world feel truly superpowered. But in my opinion, its greatest strength are the characters who make up that society.
Blackjack.
Playing blackjack at 3 a.m. I know.
Chopped. Bitches, pussy.
My Hero has one of the best casts of any series I've ever watched, truthfully unrivaled in its generation. It's a common criticism that not all of 1A is thoroughly developed, but the Todoroki Family, the League of Villains, All Might, the big 3 characters like Shinso, Gentle, Stain, Hawks, Nagant, all more than make up for that. My Hero easily has the best cast of villains of its generation, and perhaps one of the best cast of villains of any anime ever. And the leader of that cast, the one pulling them into that territory, is Shigaraki. Very rarely does a villain's development outshine the protagonist, but in this case, I truly think Shigaraki does. Not to say Deku's a bad character, of course, we'll get to him later, but Shigaraki is just so intriguing at every turn. When we first see him, he seems like nothing more than a 2-bit villain who just wants to take down the #1 hero because he hates heroes. Pretty standard, but as we move forward, the reasoning for his desire to destroy is more fleshed out, and soon enough, this goal of pure unbridled destruction has a philosophy behind it that forces the hero to question himself and reconcile with the true nature of the society that he once believed was perfect. This shines through most in his Heroes and Villains speech, which remains one of my favorite speeches in anime, and his goal of destruction remaining even after the child inside him is saved and All for One reveals that his entire life has been one big plan, brings his character together beautifully. His act of standing up for the one thing he did choose himself, his friends in the League of Villains, and all those seeking destruction along with him, was a refreshing end to his character when it seems like any villain that gets a hand reached out to them these days goes back on what they believed for the entirety of the story previously. Shigaraki destroyed until the end. It's a beautiful encapsulation of his character, and it shows that he wasn't just All For One's pawn. He had a hand reached out to him, but he decided that he still had to stick up for the people who believed in him. But speaking of All For One, his introduction is still one of my favorite, if not my favorite villain introduction in anything ever. The only thing that really competes is Kizaru riding in on that cannonball in Sabaody and then just kicking the shit out of everyone. But that doesn't have that beautiful yet bone-chilling opera behind it, or the main character and his rowdy friends who had up until now been unaffected by fear, literally paralyzed from it, unable to move or even breathe. Up until this point, All Might had been built up as a deity figure who could never lose, the strongest of them all, the greatest hero. And yet, in this singular introduction, they made All For One just as horrifying as All Might is reassuring. And it's all made better by the fact that he noticed this elite squad led by a top 5 hero. Also, during the Vigilante arc, when he speaks to Deku and copies All Might saying, "Now it's your turn," and then blows him the fuck up, it's amazing. Pure evil villains have always been my favorite kind, and All For One is the quintessential example of that. Since his birth, he has wanted everything for himself, be it by the nature of his quirk or just an intrinsic desire. He wants everything, and that includes the entire world. There's no grand plan for peace like Madara or righteous cause like Magneto. It was a completely self-gratifying desire to rule over everything, for everything to belong to him, and not because he was traumatized in the past or manipulated by a higher power. It was all him, on his own. Yes, his mother was homeless, he was birthed on a riverside, and grew up with no one to love him or care for him, but I truly don't think that affected his character at all. It's stated that basically from the moment he was conceived, he was greedy. That's why his brother was born so weak. He took all the nutrients from him because he wanted it all for himself. I know that Deku says he's not actually some demon lord, and that he's actually just a sad and lonely man, and I also don't think people can be born purely evil. I do, however, understand that quirks can have a strong impact on the personality of their wielder, and it's not looking too good for All For One. I think what it really comes down to is that his quirk naturally predisposed him to being greedy and selfish and narcissistic, and the environment that he grew up in didn't lend to preventing those traits from developing at all. In fact, they probably bolstered those traits because it was survival of the fittest. But to be fair, that is pretty charitable. I wouldn't mind if you said he was just an evil scumbag. Regardless, he turns into a man whose evil knows no bounds, and that's what I think is so cool about him. Very rarely do you get a villain who actually basks in the evilness of his actions. He enjoys evil as a concept, as a thing. He enjoys being it, he enjoys doing it, and I think it's pretty rare for a villain to just be so enamored by the idea of being evil. There's always some other motivation, whether it's like Sukuna, and that is just how he believes the world works, might makes right, or it's someone like Madara, who, as I said, has a grand plan and doesn't actually think they're evil. All For One knows what evil is. He is trying to be a comic book villain. He's like a more serious anime version of Dr. Evil. He is a caricature of what it means to be evil in all the best ways. You can't tell me that Dr. Evil wouldn't do that Your Next shit and then blow up Austin Powers. He'd do that. Anyways, that's enough of the All For One character study. Let's move on to someone who did have a righteous cause, the hero killer, Stain. Stain as a character was our first real introduction to the faults of heroes and the spotlight put on them, and he was also the first introduction to the level at which Horikoshi can write villains. In his short time in the manga, Stain became an instant fan favorite, and a villain whose existence had a continuous impact on the world of My Hero. He was the beginning of the end for the modern day hero system, the first domino in a series that led to the distrust we see in heroes by the end of the Paranormal Liberation War. In this way, he's the first example of the butterfly effect that became so prevalent a topic by the end of the series. But in this case, instead of hope being garnered into a real tangible action, like the prayers of everyone resulting in the saving of All Might, it was a real tangible action or actions garnering into hope for the future. Hope that Shigaraki relays onto Deku when he tells him to do his best at fixing society. Stain at first glance is a complex character, a person who goes around killing heroes but respects All Might and wants to be killed by him, a villain who's touting what a real hero should be, but when you look deeper, it's simple. He just wants to rid the world of sham heroes. If there's a big question, there's a big answer. And in this case, to the question, how do you get rid of sham heroes, Stain answered, kill them. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have Gentle Criminal, my personal favorite villain in the series. He's a complete foil to Stain in the sense that everything he does is purely for fame and notoriety. But the comparisons don't end there. Just as Stain started out as a vigilante trying to take down villains, Gentle started as a hero hopeful with the sole desire to be of service to others. But somewhere along the way, through all his failure, that gets lost, and he chooses to settle for becoming immortalized as a villain. While Stain impacts the world through his acts, Gentle sought to impact the world through what he symbolized. He wants to be a symbol for those unhappy in the world, no different from what All Might wanted to do by becoming the symbol of peace, or what Shigaraki decided to be at the end of the series. In this way, Stain and Gentle are two halves of All Might and Shigaraki. Stain, the desire to fix the world through the action he takes, and Gentle, the desire to help those by being a symbol to look up to. But these All Might parallels only continue for Gentle when he fights on the hero's side and stops Yue from falling. It's here that my favorite parallel of the series takes place, when Gentle says, "To be of service to others was my hope," just like how All Might said, "To be of service to others, what a joy." It shows that Gentle too, just like All Might, is a true hero, at least deep down. Gentle highlights another one of the main issues with hero society, and that's the way it ignores those who truly want to help others in favor of those who seem the most capable as heroes. Gentle is a person whose desire to save was strong enough for him to stay in the hero course even after failing multiple times, and his attempt to save the falling man was no different than Deku's attempt to save Bakugo from the Sledge villain. He just didn't have All Might there to back him up. Now, I could go on about the villains. Toga, Twice, Spinner, Dabi, they're all amazing, and I'll touch on Dabi later, but there's one name that continues to pop up while I talk about these villains, and I want to move on to him. One of my favorite characters in the series, the symbol of peace, All Might.
Put her foot out the window, like no socks on, no shoes, no nothing. Just like Bear Dog. Holy shit, it's Shaq.
Superman is the pinnacle of superheroes. He's the poster boy, basically the originator of the hero archetype. This status has been built up over a century, and no one will ever take it from him. But that's why it's so impressive that in just one decade, Horikoshi could create a character who similarly embodies that very superhero archetype. All Might is the superhero. When you think of heroism, you think of him. He embodies the essence of a hero perfectly. His unyielding desire to be of service to others, his natural genius at heroics, his pure and simple power that is able to trump all evil, it all puts people at ease. All Might set out with the goal to become a shining light in the darkness, someone whose back instills peace and calm, and he did exactly that. Everything we see of All Might is his work as the symbol of peace, and that depiction of that work is one of Horikoshi's crowning achievements. All Might fills that role of the strongest better than I think anyone in modern shonen manga. We see All Might at his lowest, powerless and decrepit for over 300 chapters. We watch him come to terms with the fact that he can no longer save people. We watch him try to turn over a new stone by focusing on teaching. But as this is happening, we don't forget he was the strongest, because at every turn, we are reminded of what he built up. For example, right after Endeavor is deemed the #1 hero, he's hit with non-stop comparisons to All Might. Then, right after Shigaraki becomes the worst villain, he consistently compares himself to All Might. Even after his retirement, All Might is everywhere, for better or for worse. As Shigaraki says after Star explains his influence on her, there's no escaping him, that cursed All Might. Throughout this whole series, we watch as All Might is actively mythologized, and when the time comes and there are lives to be saved, he lives up to that myth and simply cannot stop himself from saving. We see him become weak, a god fallen prostrate upon the earth, as Stain says, and he feels anger. For All Might, being able to save as many people as he can is a blessing. No matter what path All Might was taken down, he was going to try his best to be of service to others. All Might is one of, if not the greatest depiction of heroism in manga, and yet he still cannot compare to my favorite character in the entire series, Katsuki Bakugo, the last great Deuteragonist.
What the fuck is your fucking problem? Are you blind, deaf, or are you just fucking Amish? Did they teach you how to drive?
I'm so sorry,
You're
bro.
lucky I didn't beat the shit out of you and that troglodyte of an ugly bitch back there. What the?
Ever since I started watching anime, I've had an affinity for Deuteragonists. I thought liking main characters was boring because everything will always go their way in the end, but I wanted to like someone who would be similar in importance and power to the main character, so I landed on the Deuteragonist. The first of whom I ever truly loved was Sasuke. Since I was a kid and first started watching Naruto, Sasuke has been not only my favorite anime character, but my favorite character in fiction. No one has ever really come close, but when I first started My Hero and saw what a dickhead Bakugo was, and how cool his powers were, I knew I was in for an all-timer, and I thought that if anyone could surpass Sasuke, it was him. Unfortunately, My Hero didn't run long enough for Bakugo to reach such heights, but he is pretty much solidified as my second favorite anime character of all time. His development from egotistical bully who only has the desire to win to a true hero who wins to save, and a true friend who wants his friends to succeed, has been the greatest thing I've read week to week that isn't One Piece related. Pretty much every arc has a moment that displays his depth or development in some way. Even just after the first class, he admits his feelings of inadequacy and reaffirms his resolve. Then in the sports festival, he fights fights against Uraraka, not being cruel and demeaning, just going out of his way to beat the shit out of her, but being respectful and cautious, because at this point, he's acknowledged the strength of all the people he goes to class with. We learn that he's not just some prideful jerk, but someone who truly wants to be the best, and he'll do whatever that takes, so long as it's fair. Then, in the final exam, he puts his pride aside to work with Midoriya, even if only briefly. He defies expectations in the Kamino Ward arc when he tells Shigaraki to shove it, and don't even get me started on his second fight with Midoriya. We'll get into it later, but I'm gonna talk about it here too. It's easily one of my favorite fights in anime and manga history. His cry asking why he was the one to kill All Might, his acknowledgement of Midoriya's strength and status as the inheritor of One for All, it's all so spectacularly written. Then there's the Remedial Course arc, which I believe is the first true moment of him acknowledging his past actions and seeing them as wrong. The Joint Training arc, the Endeavor Agency arc, the Paranormal War arc, the Vigilante arc, and the final battle, he displays more depth and development in all these arcs than pretty much any character who isn't a Todoroki. In fact, I'd go as far to say that his character on its own is similar in quality to the entire Todoroki subplot, and I love that subplot. Then there's his death. Perhaps the most well done death in this generation of anime. The only competitor I can really think of is another character who I won't name from a show that may or may not be fire related, but Bakugo's death was special. I still remember exactly where I was when I read it. Outside of Home Depot, sitting in my truck at 6:30 in the morning after a night shift. There I sat, watching my favorite character die. Beautifully drawn and beautifully written. His line, "Man, I wanted an autograph so bad," hit me so hard it knocked me out of the Home Depot night shift induced stupor. Everyone's reaction to the death, the cut to his mom, everything about it was literally perfect. All of these things humanized him so much, especially the line about his card autograph and the cut to his mom, and that all made it feel that much heavier. Of course, that wasn't actually the end, which normally would ruin the moment, but honestly, it doesn't here, and that's partly because his return is so damn awesome. At a time when it felt like everything was lost, he rose again, with a cool-ass biblical shine protruding from him, and then we get one of the best moments of the entire series, and his fight with All For One, which as far as final battles go, was perfect. Not to mention, his hero name is dope as fuck, Dynamite, but the might is spelled like All Might. That shit is beast mode. Horikoshi's a genius. Bakugo is amazing. He doesn't realize it at the start, but the two people he's competing against have quirks tailor-made for success and the tutelage of the number 1 and 2 heroes. Yet he is entirely on his own. He was lucky to get an amazing quirk and is a natural genius, but he has still worked just as hard as anyone. Deku worked hard and then was blessed with an amazing quirk and then continued to work hard, whereas Bakugo was blessed with an amazing quirk and natural skill, but worked hard to hone those things into something capable of competing with the product of Endeavor's obsession and the one chosen by All Might. And all this comes full circle when he powers up by fighting through the pain caused by his quirk, just like Deku did at the start. Speaking of which, we can't have a My Hero video and not talk about the one everything runs through. The main character, Izuku Midoriya, also known as Deku.
Stolen Valor, baby! Come get me! You're not gonna do
Deku is one of my favorite main characters of all time. As someone who, as I said previously, doesn't really like main characters all that much, Deku really grabbed at my heart. What Rock Lee was for 90s kids is what Deku was for me. He inspired me to work harder in every facet of my life, be it academics, fitness, or anything else. Bakugo did too, but more so from a mindset perspective, because we don't actually ever see him doing any training or anything, but you know what I mean. His journey from a quirkless crybaby just hoping to become a hero to the greatest hero is what the whole story is all about. And man, is it a great story. His development, although understated, is some of the best I've seen of a main character, which in the shonen demographic are typically more static, especially in their ideological stance. He starts out completely enamored by heroics and the idea of saving people, so much so that he can't even fathom a reason as to why Shigaraki would want to take out All Might during USJ. From his point of view in that moment, heroes are faultless, and anyone who would want to bring harm to one is just an unreasonable, crazy person. But time goes on, and he encounters more and more villains, having a one-on-one talk with Shigaraki, fighting Stain, who fought for a strong, justified critique of hero society, and getting to know Koda, whose life was ruined by his parents' duty as heroes. But it all comes to a head, as I said earlier, when he fights Gentle Criminal, a hero hopeful just like Deku, who was made into a criminal by the very society Deku was enamored by, whether he realizes it or not. In this moment, he has been made aware of some of the faults of the hero society. And this awareness is then expanded when he sees the crying boy inside Shigaraki. His arch nemesis, the most evil person he knows, is still just a crying kid. But the heroes are still all good, right? Well, during his fight with Nagant, he realizes that that's not the case either. That it's not just society's over-reliance on heroes that's creating cracks for villains to grow out of. It's the system's abuse of those heroes as well. Through every single fight, Deku learns something. And this slow yet steady progression is truly amazing to see. And throughout that development, even real-life people's public opinion on him has changed. Deku's a crybaby, Deku's worthless, Deku's ugly, Deku's gay. All these were common criticisms of My Hero and its main character, and all of them have always been dumb as fuck and completely nonsensical. But alas, time has passed, and people have began to realize, wow, this guy is actually cool as fuck. And he is. I still like Bakugo more though.
Why do you have that?
This? He's my hero.
He's a really bad guy.
He's a traveler.
He's a pedophile.
No, he's not. He's a chef.
Now, I'd be remiss if I made a My Hero Academia video and didn't mention the Todoroki family. Shoto, Dabi, and Endeavor are all some of the most well-written characters in the series, and the nuance with which Horikoshi shows the family's interactions and decisions is done so well and, as far as I can tell, fairly realistically. Endeavor is probably the singular most polarizing new-gen character. You either love him or you hate him, and I'm the former. He is such a well-written character, and it's so interesting watching a man who knows he'll never be able to do enough to atone for his horrible actions still try every day because that's all he can do. He's tortured by his past. Every day he lives being reminded of the pain and suffering he's caused. Pain and suffering that he will never be able to undo. But he keeps on trying. Not expecting anything, just doing it because he has to. As he said during his fight against All For One, he will keep raging against himself until there's nothing left. The way I see it, he's like that robot that was like cleaning shit forever. Just as that robot will continue trying to clean up the mess until it's rusted and decrepit, Endeavor will do the exact same thing, slowly grinding himself down through his attempt at atonement until there's nothing left of him. That's the price he has to pay for what he did, and it's a price he fully imposes on himself. It is the tragic case of a man who has realized all too late just what he has done. He's a man who has become all too aware of his reprehensible actions, and so he feels nothing but immense guilt and pain at all times. Every day he lives is spent punishing himself. But do I feel bad for him? No, he did that shit to himself. In a world where a lot of the issues and villains are created by society, Endeavor is in the unique position where he himself did all this shit. Him and I think Overhaul are really the only examples of that in the entire show. And I guess All For One, depending on how you look at it. We're not gonna get into all that right now though. I could go on about this family. Shoto is an amazing character and his parallels to Dabi are so beautifully written. And Dabi, or Toya, is probably one of my favorite members of the League of Villains. Probably tied for first with Shigaraki. Everything about them is just so well done, but quite frankly, I have spent way too much time talking about these characters, so I'm gonna finish this up talking about some characters that I just couldn't go without mentioning. First, Shinso. He's such a cool character. His quirk is cool, his design is cool with the tired eyes and purple hair, and him being representation of what happens when a hero gets a more villainous quirk is awesome. He was far and away my second favorite character after season 2, and every time I see him on screen, I get hyped. He was my profile picture for like years, and I got a picture of me drawn kind of based on him. I honestly self-inserted myself into him a lot as a child, but that's okay. I wish we got to see more of him, especially now that he's in 1A, but it's okay. Then there's Mirio, the closest thing to All Might when it comes to being inspiring and having the aura of a hero. Much like Shinso, he's got an awesome quirk, an awesome design. I love that he looks like Tintin. His hero name is dope as fuck, and his physique goes crazy. A physique that you can only see that well because of the amazing art of My Hero Academia.
My baby mama's second baby daddy tripping, I need y'all to fuck him up.
I mean, just look at this shit. It's insane. I could just have this be a slideshow for the rest of the video and it would speak for itself. It's so stylized yet so detailed. The bold lines, the depth in his drawings that give it a fun roundness that in my opinion has become a key factor in his art. But there's one thing that I want to mention that I've noticed Horikoshi doing with his art, and that's changing his style to illustrate tenacity and intensity. When a character harbors a strong will, Horikoshi will change the art style he draws that character in to match that will. For example, he makes a point about how All Might is even drawn differently than everyone else, and that's because he's this larger than life superhero everyone looks up to. He's like the sun, and his intense will to be the symbol of peace is demonstrated through his comic-y art style that no one else is drawn in. This special art style, however, goes away when he's not in his muscle form, because his muscle form represents his larger-than-life aura, and when he's not powered up, he loses that aura. And then when he's in his Iron Might suit, he's drawn just like everyone else. Obviously a little more highly detailed because he's in an Iron Man suit, or maybe because in that moment all eyes are on him, but you get the point. In that moment, he was just like anyone else, just doing his best to help. The same is true for Shigaraki, at least when he goes through developments. He's drawn not like All Might with bold lines and such, but in a grittier, more realistic way to show how truly grotesque he is. All Might is drawn to look like the ideal superhero, while Shigaraki is drawn to look like the most vile supervillain. The same can also be said for Star and Stripe, who's drawn with an American comic book style, showing, similar to All Might, how she's a larger-than-life, almost unrealistic to the world around her, true superhero. Stain at points also falls into this category, and so does Vigilante Deku. This drawing characters in different styles makes all the more sense when you realize that no matter how strong or iconic Deku gets, he is still drawn in the classic way other than the Vigilante arc. Because no matter how great of a hero he becomes, he still relies on others, which is what All For One said was one of his greatest strengths. Just as impressive as the art is the anime's ability to imitate said art and bring it to the next level. Throughout early My Hero, although the art was great, it was hard to follow at times. I remember reading Deku vs Shoto or Shoto vs Bakugo and being completely lost at some points, but the animation fixed that. In fact, not only did they fix it, they turned Horikoshi's art into some of the most beautiful cuts I've ever seen. Yutaka Nakamura, Kohei Hirota, Haruka Ida, Jason Yao, Norimitsu Suzuki, Yuki Hayashi. These are all just some of the names who delivered beauty on a scale rarely seen in anime. All Might vs the Nomu, Deku vs Shoto, Bakugo's Howitzer Impact, All Might vs All For One, Deku vs Bakugo, Gently Super Lover, so on and so forth. All the way up to the entirety of Season 8, there is cut after cut of beautiful, one-of-a-kind animation. But it's not just certain cuts that are well animated. Pretty much every season has bold lines, amazing depth, and continuous fluidity. Be it during fights, a concert, or just mundane school activities, the animation is almost always on point, which is an impressive achievement considering Horikoshi has some of the best art Shonen Jump has ever seen. But we can't talk about the animation without also talking about the fights.
No. Please stop. I can't let you get close.
When it comes to fights in anime and manga, there are typically two lanes a fight can go down. Either it focuses on big moments in the narrative, highlighting the story being told through big singular clashes, like One Piece, or it has a continuous flow of combat, focusing on the choreography, creativity, and look of the fights, thus not paying as much attention to the story, like in Jujutsu Kaisen. Both are good. I find myself more partial to the latter, but My Hero has a strong mix of both. In terms of narrative, there are fights such as Deku vs Bakugo 1, Deku vs Shinso, All Might vs All For One, Dabi vs Shoto, and many more. Then for choreography-focused fights, we have All Might vs the Nomu, Endeavor vs the Nomu, pretty much all the joint training battles, Bakugo vs All For One, and so on. And obviously being in one category doesn't mean that the other has no presence in the fight, but to have an equal balance mixed well is pretty rare, but not so rare that it's never happened. Sometimes a fight can do both and mix them in seamlessly, giving beautiful exposition while not taking away from the choreography and pace of the fight. Both Naruto vs Sasuke fights in the Final Valley are examples of this, as is something like Spike vs Vicious. They do this a couple of times in My Hero, more so in the anime than in the manga obviously, but the main ones that stand out are Deku vs Todoroki, which despite being much more narratively driven, still has impressive action and a continuous flow of combat, the Bakugo team battle, which despite being mainly combat, still drives home the progression of Bakugo, but the best example of this, the one I was talking about earlier, my favorite fight in the entire series, and easily one of my top 5 favorite fights in all of anime, is Deku vs Bakugo 2. This whole exchange is just so well done, from Bakugo calmly asking Izuku to show him why All Might chose him, to him asking Izuku why he lost despite possessing All Might's power. I still remember the moment I read Bakugo asking why he was the one to kill All Might and having a pit in my stomach. The way Horikoshi drew that moment and the way he wrote the dialogue, it was all so well done, especially since you never really realized that he was even thinking of that. It was all so well done that it almost made me cry even as an emotionally repressed tween. Then when it was animated and Bakugo's voice actor Nobuhiko Okamoto put on this performance, I almost cried again. Deku revealing that the image of victory in his head is Katsuki is also an amazing moment, and it just happens during the best fight choreography the show has ever seen, and quite frankly some of the best fight choreography of its generation. Now, this doesn't really have anything to do with the narrative per se, but I really like the way both Bakugo and Deku react to each other in this fight, with them just insulting each other, Deku saying, "Sorry man, but I want to win this," and every other interaction throughout. It all feels so real, which I believe is one of Horikoshi's unsung strengths, his ability to make these characters and their environment real.
Hey, got 2 sweet teas?
Sorry?
2 sweet teas?
And 100 dicks.
Horikoshi's ability to convey raw emotion in what feels like genuine, real dialogue is amazing. My favorite example of this is during Deku's first fight with Muscular as he's getting crushed trying to save Koda. He basically accepts the fact that he's gonna die, and what does he do? Show some inhumane resolve? Remain stoic? No, he cries. He cries to his mom that he's sorry because he's a teenager, and I think most teenagers, if facing death, would think about their family. He also tells Muscular to shut up, which is a super teenage thing to do because obviously he's angry. He thinks he's gonna die. This realness is also exemplified in the Gentle fight. This loser that's been committing petty crimes, uploading them to the internet, then getting shit on by the comments. Everything he says and does fits that personality perfectly. He continuously questions Deku's ideological stance because he's ultimately unsure in his own, and this shines through when he ultimately just gives up trying to justify his actions and decides to keep going just for Labrava's sake. And during all this, Gentle tells Deku, "Mock me if you must," but Deku replies, "No one's mocking you, Gentle." And Gentle's kind of taken aback. It's a very human moment for both of them, with Gentle showing his insecurity and Deku, despite fighting him, reassuring him that it's not wrong to dream, and that he doesn't consider him a loser despite being at odds with him. It's the first moment Deku looks past someone's villainy and sees them as a real person, and it's an important turning point for his relationship with Shigaraki. Then a more recent real moment is during the final battle. Everyone's watching Deku fight the worst villain the world has ever seen, and Kaminari asks Yaomomo if he's a bad friend because he's scared for Midoriya. It's no longer All Might, this guy who's basically an unbeatable god fighting to save him. It was his own friend, a classmate in the same stage of life as him, and so naturally, he's scared for him, just as anyone would be. It doesn't just come across in serious moments though. In fact, some of the most authentic feeling moments are during the downtimes, like anytime Deku interacts with a girl. When he talked with Uraraka on the phone and got flustered, I, as a socially anxious 14-year-old at the time, related. Deku's first talk with Bakugo after their fight, when he asked him what he thought of his shoot style, it really felt like two people who have known each other all this time, but have never really talked. Horikoshi's ability to convey such a bizarre relationship is nothing but impressive. This realness is also conveyed strongly, although in a different way, throughout the first half of the series. In the earlier chapters, I'd say up until the meta-human liberation arc, everything feels very real and grounded, with All Might as the only true superhero, and everyone else's powers being much smaller in scale. Everything feels more personal. Take Deku and Shigaraki, for example. They literally meet one-on-one and talk. Shigaraki has his hand wrapped around Deku and they just talk. Something about it feels different than when they talk while falling from UA, or even when they talk during their final battle. This groundedness is most exemplified, though, during the Hosu City arc. Stain as a character not having some super destructive quirk and not really being suited for one-on-ones makes it all that much more real. In the situation they're in, you can feel the tension of both Stain trying to accomplish his mission, and Deku and Todoroki and Ida trying to get out alive. I think that's why people are drawn to this arc. It's all condensed into that little alleyway where 5% Deku, Ida, and Todoroki are using pretty simple powers and focusing on technique instead of firing off huge attacks. This realness gives so much more weight to everything that happens in the story, whether it's a fight, a death, or just an ordinary conversation. Like I was saying earlier with Bakugo, when he dies and says, "Man, I wish I could have gotten an autograph," that humanizes him, and it makes the weight of what we just saw just that much heavier. Everything hits harder when it feels real. It really feels like Horikoshi bases these characters, or at least their everyday non-hero actions, off real people, and does so flawlessly, which is part of the reason why the society, or world he built, is so strong. That's right, we're talking about the world building now. But actually, before we get into that, I want to pull you aside to talk about the voice acting, because I truly think My Hero has some of the best voice acting I've ever heard in anime, if not the best. Things like Bakugo asking why he was the one to kill All Might, the United States of Smash, Gently Super Lover, and so many more moments are just so beautifully voice acted, especially season 6, 7, and 8. I could not even fathom how many amazing voice acting performances I was hearing week to week when I was watching these seasons. I speak about it in my top 5 anime of the year video when I mention season 6 and season 7. But it truly blew me away. So I just wanted to give my flowers to the voice actors, because in all honesty, I don't think it happens enough. I think they're kind of unsung heroes of anime a lot of the time.
Man, this is the face I make when I just smash a torta.
I'm like, fuck, I did it again. Too much tequila, esti.
World building kind of feels like a lost art these days. Due to the expectations of manga, every series is just too fast paced to properly establish widespread or deep rooted aspects of the story. My Hero, however, is one of the few new gen anime that truly explores the established society set up by the factors that make the world interesting. Obviously, it's not perfect. The anti-heteromorph racism that you'd expect from a world where some people are born as lizards is displayed as a serious issue through things like the creature rejection clan who think heteromorphs shouldn't exist, and has a whole portion of the final act dedicated to it, but such a big ticket issue really should be explored at least a little bit more before the final arc. But then there are things like society's over-reliance on heroes and the transformation of hero work into performances to garner money and attention, which are all accounted for and displayed throughout the story. Additionally, the heroes from other countries are accounted for to a degree. For example, although I wish we got to see more of Star and Stripe, everything done with her does make sense. Someone like her, who has looked up to All Might all her life and acts freely, would go straight to Japan to fight Shigaraki, and her death prevents other countries from sending their heroes to Japan. So you're not watching the final war thinking, why aren't other countries getting involved in this? To this point, Horikoshi also makes it clear that not only are other countries not sending heroes, but they're actually preparing to get on Shigaraki's good side. One thing I haven't mentioned yet though, is the idea of quirk counseling and the fact that quirks contribute largely to a person's character. Most of the main villains in the story are brought about because of said effects. Toga is the most obvious example of this, with her quirk giving her a predisposition to sucking blood. But even characters like Bakugo exist because of society's general failure to deal with quirks on a level deeper than physical.
It's actually so fucking stupid. It just is fucking stupid. I don't give a fuck. I don't care.
Now, for the penultimate section of this video, I just want to mention Season 8 because it is truly not normal how good this season is. And I don't think I can make a proper review without saying just how amazing the season that we have witnessed has been. In all my years of reading and watching My Hero, I truly never imagined being able to watch a season that looks this good. I've talked a lot about how great Horikoshi's art is and how impressive it is that My Hero is even able to come close to replicating it. But this season, I truly think they outdid him. And that is saying a lot because reading those chapters week to week, I did not think they had a chance. That page of Bakugo and Deku looking at each other with the water splashing around Deku, I thought to myself, there is no way that they animate it this well. It is going to be a giant step down from the quality of this art. But I accept that. I always accept that because animation is moving. It's a completely different medium. They aren't going to have as much detail. But in this case, they did. They had that much detail and it moved and it looked so beautiful. And they've kept that level for essentially this entire season. Everything about this season, the direction, the animation, the music, the voice acting, the pacing, it has all been perfect. It is truly probably the greatest season of anime I have ever watched. And I don't even think that's egregious to say. The only single season that I can say competes with it is Megalobox Nomad. In my top 5 anime of the year video, when the season's all said and done, I'll come back to this and I'll tell you if My Hero Academia Season 8 is the greatest anime season I've ever watched. But right now, it's easily top 2 at the very least.
Would you rather have Boont Gang teach you how to jug and finesse, or squeeze lemon drops in your eyes with Supreme Patty?
Well, that's about it. My Hero Academia was a special series. It had beautiful art, whether it was the school-focused ones like the Culture Festival, or the battle-focused ones like the War Arcs, or anything in between, like even the Joint Training and the Sports Festival. I loved them all. Truthfully, I don't think any arc was a task to get through. I love how it all comes wrapping together in the final arc, with Gentle and Nagant and everyone showing up to help Deku. Horikoshi does an amazing job of bringing every single plot point that he had together in one neat package. And it's something that I've only really seen done so well in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. The music in the anime is iconic. I mean, You Say Run has to be the most popular non-title song of all time. It gets the blood pumping every single time I hear it. As I said earlier, the voice actors amazing, the dialogue amazing. I mean, the villain speeches are always so cool. Mirio's speech when he says I'm still a million, Bakugo asking why he killed All Might, pretty much everything All Might said when he was fighting All For One, especially when he said he's not dead yet, because I love that phrase and it has defined my life ever since I watched Megalobox. Endeavor's speech during his fight with All For One, it's all just so amazing. The fights are awesome, the villains, as I said before, are awesome. In fact, all the characters are awesome, and you gotta appreciate Horikoshi's creativity. The creativity required to make such a diverse roster of characters. I mean, having Miriko as a side character alone should tell you of his monumental skill. She's so sick, but it's crazy that she's just a fringe side character. That's how great this cast is. He's also got cringy YouTuber supervillains, ultimate evil demon lords, cool rock star girls, Tintin, and a metal guy named Tetsu. That's another thing I want to mention. His naming is so good. And finally, to end this all off, I want to talk about how cool quirks are, which I probably should have given its whole own section, but I didn't remember. So here we are. They're so creative, and the fact that they are actually physical capabilities, giving them their own limits, is so cool. Permeation, explosion, brainwashing, new order, overhaul, these are all such awesome quirks. Sun Eater is an awesome quirk too. All of these are so creative, and I just can't even fathom how Horikoshi came up with all of them. Mudman, he's so awesome. I love his quirk, I love his character, I love everything about him. Shout out Mudman. Gentle's quirk is awesome as fuck. I mean, making things elastic or rubbery, it's so good. Everything about quirks is just awesome. It's one of my favorite power systems in any anime ever. It's got an infinite breadth of possibility, and they've all got natural limits because of people's bodies. It's just so fascinating. The ending of this series, at least back when it happened in the manga, was met with a lot of flack, but I honestly don't agree. Yeah, had it ended with Deku stuck as a teacher, it would have been a little bit unfulfilling, but All Might literally crushed that shit in his hands and gave Deku a suit that would probably make him an instant top 3 hero, and it's thematic. I know that themes and such has become a meme, but that's honestly anti-intellectual, which seems absurd to say when I'm talking about a manga for teenagers about superheroes, but it really is, because the themes are there and they're important to the story. The quirkless boy whose only attribute was his heroism. The quirkless boy who was told by everyone that he couldn't be a hero. That quirkless boy was able to become a hero despite still being quirkless in the end, because even without a quirk, he possesses the most important trait in abundance. Without a quirk, he's still more heroic than anyone else. It's one of the main issues of the hero system that I mentioned earlier that was addressed with Gentle. The hero system does not focus on who is the most heroic, on who wants to save people the most. It focuses on who can do the specific job set out in certain parameters. So for Deku to show that the one thing he wanted his mom to tell him, that he could still be a hero without a quirk, is actually true, it's beautiful, and it ties the series up so nicely, calling back to that one central theme. Anyone can be a hero. Reading and watching My Hero has been a special experience for me. Week to week waiting for a new chapter, every new season waking up excited to watch the new episode. It's truly been a ride I will never forget, and one of my most memorable experiences with anime. I still remember seeing that advert for the kid with cool red shoes that seemed like something I would wear and thinking, hey, why not give it a shot? It looks like a modern world with cool superheroes. What can I want more than that? And holy moly, did it change my bitch ass life. I'm rambling now, but My Hero is one of a kind. Anyone can be a hero. That is the final message of the story of the boy who moved before he could think. I will see y'all in the next one. Adeuces.